Hello, my wellish friends. Today we're talking about the way we convince ourselves that we can think our way out of trauma and into our ideal selves, why overanalyzing and self-criticism don't heal us, and how the body often holds answers that the brain can't. So to talk to us through this is Erica Bonham, a licensed professional counselor, certified somatic and attachment-focused EMDR trainer, ketamine assistant psychotherapist, and author of the best-selling book, Always Enough, Never Done. Erica's work dismantles perfectionism and binary thinking. She invites people into the messy, liberating process of embodied healing. Her approach blends depth and irreverence, bringing truth, compassion, and practical tools that move us out of our heads and into genuine transformation. Erica, welcome to Wellish. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation with you and talk about why thinking our way through absolutely everything won't give us the results that we think it will, and how radical self-compassion and somatic practices can help us reclaim our wholeness.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I loved your way you put my intro together. I want to meet this person. She sounds cool.
I love it. I know they always sound like so much fancier.
Yeah, I sound fancy. All right.
So I love to start at the end results. Like I want to be able to paint a picture for my listeners so they can anticipate what they could achieve by the time they're done listening to the episode. So
Yeah.
when someone finally stops trying to think out of their pain, what's the deeper shift that they can expect to feel about themselves?
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's an end game, right? I think the reason I called my book Always Enough, Never Done is because we are in a constant state of emergence, right? So the things that help you right now might not help you in a year, or if something really tragic happens, your capacity is going to be different than it is right now. And just collectively right now, it's a really heavy, hard time. And so I almost want to, it's really hard to market yourself when it's like, I don't know exactly where we're going to go. But what I will tell you is my clients and myself, and you teach what you need to learn, right? So I'm a classic overthinker. The most of the people that I work with are the Venn diagram of highly sensitive, really smart, highly critical, perfectionist, just high achieving, but also like that urgency and stuckness of never really trusting yourself. And usually when we have an overthinking part of us, it was adaptive, right? There was something happening that we were like, I got to figure this out, whether it was a misattuned caregiver or trauma or just something that was missing or something that happened that was really scary. And we are like, I gotta get really smart here. I gotta learn how to track. And it was adaptive. But when we start to work with those parts of us and we start to practice a more embodied approach, we actually learn to have more capacity. And I saw this meme the other day that was like, calm is a myth. Calm is a lie. It's capacity that we actually want. And I loved that language. I'm stealing that language. I wish I would have paid attention to who it was, but sorry, person who's posted that. But that really is so true. And so when we start bringing in the body, and it's not just body, it's also a practice of compassion. When we start doing that, and I'd love to talk a little bit about the physiological reasons for that. That's not just your woo-woo, nicey nice therapist telling you to be kind to yourself. There's physiological things that happen in the body when we practice compassion and when we bring in the body that allows us to actually grow our capacity to hold multiple truths, to hold the truths of it is brutal, life is really hard, and it is magical and beautiful, and we can step into the places where we do have power. And the world needs our medicine, right? The world needs us in our fullest capacity right now so that we can pull the arc closer to where we want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that there is a way to expand that capacity, because I completely agree, and I also really like the way that that was worded, is that it all comes down to the amount of capacity that we have. And that's what we say when like people screw us over or we get upset about something, that it's just like they are operating at the capacity that they have at that point. But why is it that their capacity isn't expanding, and why has ours expanded so much? So I absolutely would love to talk to you about that, and we will get into like the body, how the body is physiologically affected by all of these things. Absolutely, because I'm excited. I want to hear all about that kind of stuff. I want to start though by kind of talking about the overthinking part of it. I feel like a lot of us confuse analyzing and problem solving and figuring it all out with healing. So why do you think thinking feels safer than feeling?
So, okay, one, again, I think it was adaptive to go into your head and figure it out. And I can even right now in this moment, right? I'm meeting you for the first time, and I want to do a good job, and I want to offer your listeners something. So I can feel myself going into my head a little bit. I can feel myself like wanting the answers and wanting to give you the cognitive learning, right? And then I'm just going to intentionally drop into my belly a little bit and into my heart and into my core and slow down. And I'm also going to invite your listeners to just notice just the little ways that you might be carrying whatever's happening in your personal life, in relationships, and just the larger collective. And just notice, and notice how when we're in our heads, it's almost like a dog paddle. It's like a dog paddle out of the pain. And there's like a frenetic energy, but it allows us to like almost feel, it's like a false sense of control and power that part is looking for. And we can have compassion for it, like, oh, honey, you did that, and you did a good job, and it makes sense that we had to go into our heads and try to find the answers there. And to just notice your belly and notice your heart and notice your shoulders, and even just notice if you felt something different from when I was in my head and in my body,
I definitely
right?
did.
Like there's more of a relational quality. I'm more present. I'm curious about you. I'm curious about how you're doing, and I'm not trying to like have all the answers in my head. And
100%. And like, because obviously I have that same feeling, because I'm also a person that wants to make sure that the podcast goes well for you as well.
right.
As you start to talk about that, I obviously try to start noticing it in my body and do the same
Yeah,
exact
just
thing.
drop
So it
in.
definitely works.
Yeah. And so if I could just talk a little bit about the neuroscience of that. And so we
Please.
have a vagus nerve. I don't know if you've talked about that at all, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So the vagus nerve runs from your brainstem to your gut, right? And it's really, the vagus nerve is in charge of like 75% of regulating your nervous system, of really growing your nervous system's capacity. And so it's in charge of heart regulation. It's in charge of gut regulation, right? So a lot of people with unprocessed trauma have a lot of digestion issues. It's in charge of sugar metabolism and regulation. But guess where it does not connect to? The frontal lobes and the thinking brain. And so,
Oh, wow.
right? So like we can know all kinds of stuff, right? I've read all of the parenting books, right? I've read all of them. And I know
Yes.
it. I can know that, or clients can know that the abuse that they suffered was not their fault, right? Most of us have psychoanalyzed ourselves, and we can quote unquote know where our issues come from, right? But all of that knowing doesn't matter if we are dysregulated. So the example that I always use is, my kid's 14 and 12 now, but when they were younger, there was this incident where my 4-year-old threw a tantrum because we didn't have blueberry cream cheese in the refrigerator. And in my,
It's a valid thing to be upset about.
fair, but I knew that I needed to like hold this boundary, but also like I know it's disappointing, buddy. Like, we can't always have our first choice. Like, we got to figure out how to like manage these emotions. But I did not do that, right? Because I was dysregulated. And in my mind, I was like, I'm raising two entitled white boys and they're spoiled. And the last thing the world needs is more entitled white boys. And and so I lost it, right? I did not do the attuned validation. I was like, are you kidding me? Do you know what other people have to deal with in this world? And blah, blah, blah. And like, you're so entitled.
Yes.
And my poor 4-year-old is like, I just was sad about the blueberry cream cheese.
That's hilarious.
Right. And so like you can know all kinds of things. I'm a queer identified person and I know, and I was raised in the church, right? And I know that I consciously don't believe the shit that I was told, that homosexuality is just as bad as murder, for example, someone once told me. I can know in my mind that that is horseshit. But there are parts of me that absorbed that because of adaptation. It was connected to my sense of belonging. It was connected to my sense of safety. And so even though I know better, there are parts of me that still carry not enoughness or something wrong with me or defectiveness. Those are related to my adoption too, right? Like I can know that my birth mother didn't give me up because there was something wrong with me, right? But the adopted self, the baby part, the part of my nervous system that felt her with me and then didn't, then it was gone. As a lot of adoptees do, we organize ourselves around rejection, right? Like everything we experience as rejection. And so I have had to work really deeply with my body, and thinking was not going to do it. It just wasn't, because my vagus nerve doesn't connect to my frontal lobes, just like your vagus nerve doesn't connect to yours.
It's so bizarre because I talk about that concept a lot, about how we logically know something to be true, but for whatever reason we like cannot get ourselves to do it. And I call it the knowledge to skill gap. That it's just like if you paint a picture, we know logically that you have to practice over and over and over and over again in order to do that. But we don't do that when it's something that we are smart enough to understand that a confident person makes eye contact, takes up space in a room, can use their voice in a situation. But then we go to do it and we're like, oh no, your opinion's right. Totally. Absolutely. Don't even worry about it. So
Right.
it's like you do that over and over, but I never thought about it for the logically knowing that your birth mother didn't reject you aspect of it. I never thought of that. That is so interesting.
Yeah.
So you might have said it already, and it might be the dysregulated nervous system,
Right.
but what is the pattern that you see in people that are so good at intellectualizing everything,
Yeah.
but like cannot for the life of them apply it?
Yeah. Well, something was unsafe. Something was overwhelming and we learn to regulate our nervous systems through healthy, attuned attachment, right? And so when we don't have that, which most of us, I mean, I am a trauma therapist and I hope that I show up as attuned and regulated for my kids as much as I can, right? But, in that moment, it was a missing experience for my kids, right? To not have that attuned caregiver to help them process and work through those feelings about the blueberry cream cheese, right? And so there's two parts. One is we need safety. We need a sense of power and control and autonomy and a sense of like self-determination. And we need a sense of connection and attunement in order to be regulated. So that skill, that logic to skill gap that you were talking about, I would say, in that moment when you just did that, when you're like, yeah, never mind, your opinion matters. What I immediately thought of was regulation, was being able to stay present and stay regulated in your body enough to actually feel like you had a choice in that moment. That shifting your eyes, and it seems like a fawning response, like, never mind, you're right, right? Is
Yes.
that procedural automatic thing that likely happened and that you did to adapt, or whoever did, whether it's whoever is doing that, your system did that to keep you safe, to adapt, and to keep you connected to your either likely your caregiver, but also whoever you felt like had the access to the power and had access to food, shelter, water, right? So we do that, and it becomes automatic and it becomes procedural. And so to shift it, yeah, I mean, of course, we do need to use our minds. Of course, we do want to have some empowerment and choice, but we might need to do some regulation strategies so that it even feels like the choice is there for us to hijack that procedural automatic thing that our systems do to either keep us safe or keep us connected, or both.
Okay. So if we're going to do something like that, I think of going into like the thinking idea that I'm going to try to sit there and figure out intellectually why, who caused that, why that happened, like basically trying to like heal that through logic, I suppose, in a sense. So, and I know that like we want to figure things out, but I also know that like if you just relax your body and you don't have to if you don't want to. I think I've heard people say that. Like I
Yeah.
still don't really know how I feel about it, to be totally honest with you. But if you like, how do you tell the difference when you're like reflecting in a way that moves you forward compared to like in a way that you're avoiding,
Yeah.
whatever they're just trying to hide from like
Totally.
all of the things
Yeah.
that are happening
Yeah, I think that's a
or
great
have happened.
question. And I think that is again, like sort of a lifelong practice
Yeah.
of really using clarity and discernment, wise discernment, and to just notice, like, am I frenetically stewing in my own shit right here? Am I frenetically trying to figure it out? Is if there is a sense of urgency and freneticness, right? And if all of the energy is in the like thinking mind, you are probably dysregulated, right? And it's like if you could connect to your heart and you can connect to your stomach and you feel a sense of like groundedness, a felt sense of I am present and I'm going to use my mind to visualize how I want to respond next when this person that's really challenging for me comes at me again, right? And I'm not only am I going to visualize it, but I'm going to feel it in an embodied way. Like, what is the energy? What am I feeling in my body when I'm visualizing the solution to this problem? And sometimes there's not a solution, right? Sometimes problems don't have easy answers. And but what you can think about or what you can practice, not even think about. See, we're so automatic to say like
It's so programmed.
we're gonna think of, but what you can practice is how do you want to feel in your body? What are the values that you want to bring into that difficult conversation? What are the values that you want to guide your responses? And feel that in your body. So if your value is empowerment, connection, wisdom, just take a minute to just feel what those energies feel like in an embodied way. What's the rhythm of them? What's the texture? Where do they feel more expansive? Can you just like feel it in your stomach? What do they feel like in your bones? And if you're practicing that, the emergence will happen, right? Like sometimes we got to use our mind and figure out, like practice what we want to say. That's useful. But if you're just frenetically like looping, that is probably a good cue that you're overwhelmed and that you likely maybe need to go and move your body in a way that feels intuitively right for you, and to practice some level of compassion for yourself. And the physiology of that is because when we feel seen, when we feel like we are being attuned to, those parts of us naturally soften. So even if we're thinking about overthinking, right? If we can drop into that overthinker, that overdoer, that people pleaser, that even that critical part of ourselves, and we can kind of sit across from it and say, I know that you were trying to help. I know that you were adaptive, and you have taken me as far as you can. And so we need to teach you some different skills and some different jobs, because what you're doing is just more of the same. And I know it feels really scary to change those patterns, because those are stored in the survival part of our brain, right? It feels like if we stop people pleasing, it feels like if we stop thinking, if we stop criticizing, then we're going to fucking die, or we'll turn into a puddle on the floor, right? And it's like, just breathe, and we're going to try something different. So I think I sent you, and if not, I will, to put in the show notes. I have a free resource of 11 polyvagal exercises that are really designed to strengthen and tone your vagus nerve. And you don't have to do all 11, right? But they have video links to me teaching those, so that you can actually see what I'm doing with my body. And just
Okay, hell yeah.
find
That's so
one or
exciting.
two that you feel just a little something with. Like, I usually feel like a release in my lower gut. And it's anything. It doesn't have to be these 11 things. It's yoga, it's walking, it's movement, it's moving just shaking out your system.
Jumping up and down.
Yeah, it's like shaking and
Yeah.
lion's breath or whatever. It's anything that you feel just a felt sense of, like an alignment with your vagus nerve, or a release in your lower gut, or just a little bit more spaciousness in your system, in your body. But you're not going to be able to tone the vagus nerve in one session, right? It just like you can't get arm muscles with one rep of arm curls. It's really a neat, and even if it's just 1 minute, you do not need to spend an hour. You don't need to go to an hour long yoga class. Catch the momentum. Just do one thing that is in service of expanding your capacity. And I really think people will start to see a difference. I don't want to add like, oh, you got to do your green smoothie and your cold plunge and your, morning light
No, I
walk
hate that.
and your, like the 2 hour long morning routine that's going to keep your baseline. I don't want to contribute to that. We just need to find what is your medicine that you need to bring in the body, to bring in your sense of compassion. Because if criticism were an effective change agent, we would all be enlightened by now.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and I want to ask you about the self-criticism, because I feel like being able to do this, being able to be compassionate with myself first, is what has allowed me to drop into my body more.
Yep.
And so like being able to get a hold of that self-criticism, I want to talk to you about it, but I do want to say to you that I think the idea that you are going, like that it's the sticking up in your head and being frantic, like in the example that I gave, that I was like, oh yeah, you can say whatever you want, is so mind-blowing to me, because I feel like with all of, like I said, I don't really know how I feel about it, but this is making me feel like it doesn't matter. Like, obviously, sure, we want to like learn more about ourselves, but it almost doesn't matter what happened or why it happened or what it means about us. We just want to feel good.
Yeah.
Like, we just want to feel good inside of our body as much of the time as possible. And that's what all of these practices that you are providing, like, do for you. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, totally. And so something that I talk about in the book is what I call both descending path work and ascending path work. And what I mean by that is like the descending path work is looking at the shadow, looking at the not so pretty parts of ourselves, and looking at the not so pretty things that have happened that we have maybe, again, for survival purposes, managed and put away and like put in the box, and we're never going to look at it again. But also the not so pretty parts of us, right? That we have all played the role of bully or perpetrator or caused harm in some way. And, you know, the trauma triangle of bully, victim, martyr. And where do we over identify with those roles? And how do we digest and compost and go toward that, not to torture yourself, but to actually digest, compost, and transmute that shit so that we can actually make room for the ascending path work. And the ascending path work is feeling good, creating a new identity, identifying the values that you want. Yes, self-affirmation, but self-affirmation can be another thinking, you know, it can be another top-down process where you're just neurotically repeating like, I am good enough, I am beautiful, I am loving. And the other parts of you are like, that's great and everything, but I don't believe that to be true.
Yeah, but
right?
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
they need that deeper digestion work. And it's not one then the other. It's not this linear thing. It's a spiral down and a spiral up all the time, right? You hit a layer of grief or trauma, and you're like, damn it, I thought I was through this shit. And, you know, and then you got to like go toward it with love, with compassion, with where do you feel it in your body? And you breathe, and then you have more space to grow and to do something different. So, yeah, I guess I think it's that both and practice.
For sure. I feel like doing like the self-criticism too is a way of disguising, like it's just another way to be a perfectionist.
Totally.
Or like to do like the affirmations, and then when you internally are like, yeah, you don't think that about yourself. It's
Yeah.
just like another way to self-criticize. So like
Totally.
what like
And
can you talk about that, Ty?
yes. So, okay. So perfectionism and high criticism usually go hand in hand. They're very adjacent. I rarely see one without the other, right? And let's say that we don't want to lose self-reflection, right? There are a lot of people in this world that could use a little more self-reflection.
It's true.
Right?
It's true.
But a lot of the people that I work with, and I suspect a lot of your listeners, are overdeveloped in self-criticism.
sure.
It has moved past self-reflection, and it is now into self-criticism, into blame, into shame, into perfectionism. And what I really want to have people drop into is just like step back and just notice how that part of you got developed. And you might not have had like a what we think of as an abusive family, although if you did, you most likely definitely, you know, learned to try to track what was going to get you in trouble. But even if you didn't come from you know, what we think of as a traditionally like abusive household, but maybe there was a misattuned caregiver, but also just living in the world, right? We are living in a society that is constantly criticizing. The dominant cultural values are perfectionism, never enoughness. I mean, you know, capitalism makes money off of us not feeling good about ourselves, right? Like that's sort of marketing, advertising 101 is what's the pain point and how do you monopolize that to get people to buy your wrinkle cream, right? And so we are even if you had the most attuned, loving caregivers in the world, we're still swimming in all this shit. So like we tend to develop critics, and so it's just dropping in to getting just having the intention to engage with my question with your heart, and engage with my question as you would a really good friend, and from the body, like really this intention of not saying the right thing, but just a resonance and a curiosity and a presence, and just be like, how was it adaptive for you to develop this part of you that was tracking, that was tracking what you were going to get criticized for, whether that be from your
Mm-hmm.
parents or from the larger society or from your partner or whatever, right? How was it adaptive to learn how to track and to learn how to predict what was going to get you either rejected or a felt sense of powerlessness or cutting off from the herd, and how it was adaptive for you to internalize that so that you could change it, that you could you could predict it and you could try to shift it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was so helpful, but then it becomes its own thing. It takes on a life of its own, and we start to criticize everything about ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
shame is really, it turns into shame. Shame is this sense of we are not okay as we are. We are not enough. We do not belong on this planet as we are. We do not deserve to take up space as we are. We've got to play small or shapeshift or turn into what we have to believe. Now, guilt, on the other hand, is like, oh, we've made a mistake here and we need to make some actual amends and changes. That's different, right? But
Mm-hmm.
shame is like, no, I am bad. And it's paralyzing. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
criticism doesn't work, is that it connects to the shame body, and it just is like it fuels the story that this is who we are and there's nothing that we can do to change it. Now,
Wow. Yeah.
sometimes we do need to meet it with compassion and like, I love you and I know you were trying to track. And sometimes to our internal bullies, we need to be a little bit more firm. Like,
Yeah.
I love you and you need to sit the fuck down and shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not kicking you off and we're going to teach you some new skills, but like, similar to how we would with a bully, right? If you ignore bullies, if you just put up with bullies, they actually get worse. And so
Yeah, they continue
they
to walk all over
continue.
you. They learn that
So,
they
but
can
if
do
you're
that.
like, no, I'm not available for that today. You need to sit the fuck
Mm-hmm.
down, leave me the hell alone, and shut up, right? And
I love
and
that.
so like it's still a
Mm-hmm.
loving resonance. Like we can still
Mm-hmm.
be loving and present to those critical parts, but at the same time, quite firm in our boundaries with those parts.
I almost feel like that's what. Now, correct me if I'm using the wrong word, because I almost want to say it feels like radical self compassion in a sense. Like it's not the compassion that you're like, honey, I love you. You did your best. You're so great. But it's still compassion in the sense that, like,
100%.
when someone is facing these parts of themselves that are really painful
Yeah.
to look at or to think about, and they're just being mean as fuck to themselves about those
Yep.
things,
Yeah.
being able to be like, sit
It
down.
is the
Like,
kindest
that's
thing.
not true.
It is the kindest thing, right? Like if our kids, like I saw this video of this teenager throwing a tantrum about not being able to get into first class, right? And I'm like, oh, this I mean, of course I was really annoyed, but I was also like, this poor child has no self-esteem, has no skills, has
Mm.
no ability to be able to manage his emotions about not being able to sit in first class. And the kindest thing that somebody could have done for him would have been to say, honey, sometimes we're just not going to get our way. And I love you. And I know it's really hard. And we got to get it together here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would not
Mm-hmm.
have been the kindest thing to be like, yeah, honey, you're right. You're right. We can't get into first class. You have every right to your anger and blah, blah, blah.
Yes, gentle parenting. Yeah.
Like, no, like, yes, you can be angry and disappointed. And I understand that. And what do you need to be able to like have the capacity to handle this? And obviously that would have come at the blueberry cream cheese moment in his life,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Before the 17-year-old was throwing a tantrum about not being able to
Yeah,
sit first
literally.
class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you talked about wanting to talk about, and again, we can get more into it even more in depth later, but I'm just kind of curious, like, for this aspect of it, what does the physiological, like how is your body responding when you're being self-critical and all of that stuff?
Totally. So when our critics are taking over, we tend to be in our top down, in our thinking, right? And we also are very dysregulated, right? So it's fueling the fire. It's like, and it tends to loop. It's like we feel something and then we think and we criticize and we feel and we think. And it's like this, we're like igniting the fire of our emotion and head, heart, head, heart, head, heart. And it's just this loop. And we can often feel it especially when I start working with clients, the first step is really to like get familiar with the cues of what that feels like. What does overthinking, what does criticism, what does frenetic energy, what does perfectionism feel like in your body first, and to start to really be able to catch it more quickly. Because what's happening is just more and more dysregulation, and you're grooving out those neurological connections to be stronger and stronger and stronger, right? It just becomes more and more procedural. But then when we disrupt it and we're like, hey, critic, I love you and I know you had to track and I need you to stop. I need you to stop and we're going to practice something different. And so sometimes, especially if clients have a lot of trauma, practicing compassion is really hard. They're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know what to do. I don't know what that is. I don't know how to do that. I've never had any template for that. So we practice neutrality. And if we can't get to neutrality, we practice, let's just try to be a little less of an asshole to yourself today, right? Just turn it down a little bit, right? So we just got to meet ourselves where we are. And so maybe you can just practice neutrality. You're like, hey, I'm just a human being out here with the rest of these other broken human beings trying to connect and trying to be seen and trying to, I don't even want to say figure it out, right? But just trying to point my feet in the direction of what feels like wisdom, right?
I love that.
To point my feet in the just the breadcrumbs, just following the breadcrumbs of what feels like a different way of transformation, of growth. And if even just a little part of you can believe that you are just a human being and we need each other. And really the higher purpose here is that the world needs your medicine. And we don't get your medicine if you are criticizing yourself and playing small and not offering what you have to offer, because we need each other. And we need you here. We need you here and we need you present. We need you not numbed out and dissociated. We need you here. And so you do the work, look at the shadow so that you can be here for your people, for your family, for your kids, for your partners, and for our larger community, because we need you. We need you here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I think like so far my biggest takeaway really has been about like getting inside of your body when you are having those moments, like being able to stay as present as possible so that you're not headed into say the word again,
frenetic, right? It's like that
frenetic.
that
I love
bouncy
that. Yeah.
ball.
Okay, well, because I'm always talking about being frantic.
Yeah.
And so that's what
Same.
that is. Better word.
Totally. Same. It's the ping pong ball, right? The bounce,
Yeah,
bounce.
totally. And so like that kind of reminds me of just that same thing, like being able to say to yourself, like, I need to point my feet in the direction of knowledge. I need to point my feet in the direction of this, but at the same time, I am good enough just as I am right now. I have worth just because I exist, and I'm okay. I'm safe. Everything is all right in this moment.
Beautiful. Yes, I love that so much. And so here are two things I want to say. One, just try it. Tiny experiments. Just be weird.
Yeah.
I always say, like, if you want to heal some shit, you have to have a willingness to get a little weird. And just go into the bathroom at your office and shake your body. Like, shake it out. And just try it, right? Just see how you feel, right?
And you really do feel better when you do
feel better,
that.
I promise, right? Just move your body. Throw some music on while you're cooking and just move. Just Move your system in whatever, even if you're just like, maybe you're at it, maybe you're in the meeting and your boss is triggering the shit out of you. And all you can do is just underneath the office table is just roll your wrists out, right? Just roll your wrists out. Or just move a little bit.
I did that in my work meeting this morning. Right? I was doing like stretches,
stretching a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And just bringing the intention, or even just taking a 4-count breath on the inhale and a 6-count breath on the exhale, and just bring the intention of checking in with your heart and checking in with your stomach, and just noticing where you're carrying the tension, where you're bracing, right? And then the other thing that you said, which is like, you are enough as you are. That is something that I say to almost every client. And I want to say that to you and to your listeners, and like, just to notice, like, but notice these words in your body, because part of perfectionism, part of our society, is this myth that there is this perfect version of ourselves out here, out in the ether somewhere. And actually, everything that we are transforming into is always and already in us. It's actually what we are. It's what our true nature is. And nothing and no one can take that away from you. It might feel like they have, if you have trauma, or if you have undigested grief, or if you've walked a really hard life. But nothing and no one can take your true nature away. And just notice these words in your body. You are always and already enough, lovable, worthy, and inextricably connected to every other living thing on this planet, just as you are. And we all have work to do. We all have shadow. We all have ancestral trauma that we're carrying around. We all have layers of unhealed shit, but we're here to remember our true nature. And the more that we can do that, the more that we can offer the medicine that the world needs right now. Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. You mentioned the ascending and descending, and that it's always a mix of the both. Can you talk about that more? Because I keep thinking about it, and I'm curious.
Yeah. So what I would put in the camp of descending path work is things like EMDR therapy. So I'm an EMDR therapist. It's a PTSD protocol where you're either holding paddles or moving your eyes back and forth, and it literally helps to kind of move stuck trauma in the body. And it sounds weird, but we have lots of PET scans that show lots of activation.
I've done it. I swear it works.
Yeah. It's weird, but it works, right?
It does something.
And it's going toward and through the parts that we really don't want to go toward and through, right? And it's not reliving the trauma. It's not stewing in the negative. It is being honest about what has happened, and being honest about our own shadows and our own parts that we want to shift with compassion. So the digestion is the down and dirty work. It's the going toward the grief, going toward the pain, going toward the trauma, going toward the parts that for one reason or another felt overwhelming at the time, likely because we didn't have the support that we needed. Kids can go through some really horrible shit, but if they have an attuned person that gets them through, that can name what is happening in the moment, they are much less likely to develop PTSD and trauma, right? We can go through some really horrible shit, but if we feel held and if it feels named, it doesn't stick to us. It doesn't get stored. So that's the digestion. That's the descending path, right? It's the down and dirty work. It's the shit that we don't want to do. It's the composting, right? But we can also be overdeveloped in like looking for the negative or looking for the bad. And so we do have to practice what is a more embodied self-affirmation, right? So instead of like, I am beautiful, I am beautiful, I am worthy, like neurotically repeating, like just
I know. Every time you do it, I love that you start rocking
is
like
like
you're in
this
a
like
cell room.
neurotic,
I love that.
yeah, like
It's so
smoking a
real.
cigarette while you're I am good enough. But it's a hey, what does beauty feel like? Not glamour and being pretty, but what does like a beauty, a connection with nature feel like in your body, right? What are the values that light you up? If it's adventure, if it's curiosity, if it's compassion, what does the energy of that feel like in your body? And can you step into that experience a little bit right now in the present moment, right? What does just practicing, if you naturally tend towards dissociation or you naturally tend towards self-criticism, just experiment with what it feels like to just kind of go to opposite action. What would I say to a really good friend? What would I say to my own child? Would I say the shit that I say to myself to a
Absolutely not.
4-year-old sitting across from me?
Absolutely not.
Like you're a real piece of shit and nobody's ever going to love you because you're 10 pounds overweight and you're whatever, right? Whatever the shit that we say to ourselves. Or like imagine saying that to a 3-year-old dangling her little feet over the chair. And if you wouldn't say it to the 3-year-old, what would you say instead? Right?
Yeah.
And let yourself be heartbroken that you would and that you have said those things to yourself, because the heartbreak is where it changes. And that like, oh God, I've been so mean to myself. And it hasn't worked. So let's try something different.
Let's do something different.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's not to say like that we don't want self-reflection, because we want self-reflection. We do want to be able to be like, I did not show up in alignment with my integrity in that moment. I maybe caused harm there in that moment. And I want to not just apologize, but really figure out what's the root of that pain. Because if you're acting out of alignment, there's wound underneath there. And so, it's, even in the collective, the shit that's happening in the collective, the people that are doubling down on dominance and cruelty and being horrible to each other, it is because they have their own unhealed and wounded parts, that they too have also been part of a system that has, told them that the only way that they can be is in this one narrow way of being. And they're trapped too. And I'm not excusing their behavior. It's definitely like we got to stick up to the bullies, whether there are internalized bullies, right? But it's also like, I love you and what you're doing right now is unacceptable, but I can see that the root of it is your own pain. And we need each other. And I hope that you can find a way back to loving yourself and back to your true nature. Because I really do believe that most people in the world are not intentionally doing evil. They're just programmed and they're unhealed.
Yeah.
And it's a fine line, right?
100%.
Where do we give grace versus where do we need very strong boundaries, right? And we're in the dance of that. And there's not a perfect formula or solution. But to just be in the dance of that is what we're being asked to do.
And knowing that it's not your responsibility to heal people.
Nope.
Like if somebody is unhealed and they're acting in a wild ass way, it's not, you don't have to associate with it. You can.
Right. And my
from
other both and, I know Mel Robbins' Let Them is like all the rage right now. And there is wisdom in that. There is medicine in that. Let them, let them be, let them do their thing. Let them criticize you. Let them. And we're not fucking robots, right? Like we are impacted by shitty behavior. And so, like, I think it's just that both and. It's like, let yourself acknowledge how you have been impacted and then have a way, whether that's movement or self-compassion practice or a combination of those two, where you acknowledge how that wound came in, you acknowledge their shitty behavior, and you're like, yep, it makes sense. When somebody treats you disrespectfully, like, it hits you, and I'm going to take ownership of my own process with it and point my feet in the direction of wisdom, right? So it's like that both and. Let them, and you're allowed to be human as well.
100%. Why is it so hard for us to trust our body's signal? Like, I know that when we feel that in our body, I know we're so programmed to, like, it's because I know, like, with the logic piece of it, that we're so programmed to follow the logic and what makes sense, and like we're problem solving it in our head, and even if it's not true, we think we've come up with some solution for it that makes enough sense that we're like, well, that's the truth, even though it could be just a bunch of assumptions. So, like, I'm curious, when we do drop down into our body, how can we trust our intuition and trust what our body is feeling without that skepticism?
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, that's a really good question. So one, I think we're up against evolution, right? Our brains were developed to focus on the negative, right? To track that wrestling in the woods, right?
Yeah.
So we are up against years of evolution that is tracking what is dangerous and tracking what is negative, because it was survival. And so our brains are there to keep us safe, not happy. Right? It was dangerous, actually, to be like, I'm just going to feel how beautiful the sky is, and I'm going to feel that in my body. Yes. And then you get eaten by a fucking tiger, right? Like, It was dangerous. So we're up against evolution a little bit. But most of the time, we are not going to die in the next 2 minutes, barring any unforeseen thing. But if we're not going to die in the next 2 minutes, then it's likely okay to do a check-in with your body. And I think the way that you start to trust it is that you begin to just practice those tiny experiments, and then you start to see a shift in how you show up. You start to feel a shift in how you show up, and then it becomes its own momentum, right? You trust yourself by the practice of just practicing trusting yourself, just experiment with it. But we're also taught, we live in a very thinking society. We live in a very left brain oriented society where we want the answers. The left brain is task oriented, productive, thinking, like get shit done. We live in a society that really values left brain thinking, productivity, like criticism. We're swimming in that. So we are conditioned for that. We don't really live in a society that values art or mystery or uncertainty or, emotion, but emotion in a wise way, right? Not in a tantrum throwing way.
I love that. I love that distinction.
We're starting to realize the importance of that. But, even in our own brains, the left brain does not see the value of the right brain. The left brain thinks that the right brain is stupid and useless.
How bizarre.
Right?
Totally.
So, like, when there's damage to either side of the brain, the right brain can see the value of the left brain. It's like, yeah, I really value that you can get shit done and that you can, cook the dinner and do the grocery shopping. And like, I see the value of that. And I am a big picture. Like, I see the value of the big picture. The left brain does not see the value of the big picture.
The left brain's like, yeah, I'm great.
I'm the one that's doing it all. I'm the one. Yes. Right? And literally. So we live in a society that really values that. And it does not value nonlinear mystery, art, poetry, But I think we're finding that that left brain, task oriented, productivity at all costs isn't really getting us where we want to be. And it's understand we can have compassion because, you know, even as we think about, I know this is kind of a little bit of a left turn, but even as we think about ancestral trauma. So
I was actually going to ask you about
yeah,
that, so that works.
so like there's an his name is Resmaa Menakem, and he wrote a book called My Grandmother's Hands. He's a Black psychologist, and he talks about racialized trauma. And one of the things that he talks about is the white-bodied folks that came over here were coming over here from very brutalizing situations, right? They were coming over here from their communities being raped and pillaged, their culture being taken away, their like all of this horrible things had happened, and that trauma never got dealt with. And we developed the cultural values. If you think about that, right? Individualism and productivity and pull yourself up by the bootstraps and, perfectionism and getting it done. Those were all trauma responses that got decontextualized over time and became the dominant cultural values, right? And then, of course, we projected all of that unhealed trauma onto bodies of color, which have a whole nother different type of ancestral trauma than we might. But we can carry up to 14 generations of trauma in our bodies.
Holy shit.
So a lot of fucked up shit has happened in 14 generations. And most of us can even just go back to our parents or our grandparents and really see that some unhealed stuff happened just in that line, right? But if we're going back, way back, then we've got some stuff that we are carrying.
Yeah.
And so,
sure.
if you think about thinking, if you think about perfectionism, urgency, only one right way, the need for certainty and the need for being right, that all culminates into the overdeveloped thinking and the need for certainty. I also think that for me and for a lot of my clients, spiritual trauma, like a dogmatic, religious, shame-based upbringing, also teaches us that the body is not to be trusted. So we inevitably dissociate from our bodies because they're sinful and because they are not to be trusted. And so, I think that folds into the larger system for some folks.
That's so bizarre. How cool.
And again,
Oh my
even
God.
though we
So
know
how did
different,
they-
we know different, but it's still
Yeah.
patterned in us.
It's still how you operate. That's what I was going to ask. Like, how does it shape the way that we show up in the world?
Oh man,
Just
I
because we're-
just think it's so complicated, right? It's so
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah.
But can we just feel it? Just more than thinking, can you feel it? Can you feel how maybe your ancestral line, or can you feel how the larger society has shaped you, or feel how your family of origin has impacted your ability to trust your body, or your ability to, stop the internalized critics, or how the critic developed in the first place? Can you just feel a felt sense of perfectionism in your own system, or feel a felt sense of criticism and how that shows up? Do you shrink? Do you tense up? Do you brace? Do you clench? And what is it like? I see you did a good job, and you've taken me as far as you can, honey, and we're gonna practice some new things and just
I
notice
like
it.
Yeah, I like those questions because I just think that something that blew my mind when I started to figure out generational trauma, and my mom and I really enjoy looking down the line and being like, holy fuck, look at this pattern that was happening.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so bizarre that I'm lucky enough to have a mom that is interested in that and will figure that out, but a lot of people don't have the ability to even see that all could not be the way it has to be, or is all like this accumulation of this ancestral trauma, this generational trauma, and you've got no idea because it's just like always the way that it's been.
Yeah.
So I like the questions because it makes you start to question what is possible for you.
And again, just thinking about our collective healing, right? Which all of us, again, I think regardless of whether or not you're on the right or the left, to some degree, like we all feel this collective dysregulation, right? This collective disharmony. And what if there was a different way, And if we could just step into the possibility of what it would feel like to be in a more regulated society, in a society that feels safe for all people, because if it's safe for all people, then it's safe for all people, right? And so what would it be? Just dip your toes into the waters of imagining what it could be like to live in a world that's not organized around optics or certainty or perfectionism or urgency. What if the world were more organized around reciprocity and beauty and connection and curiosity and seeing the magic in around us, And I know that for some people that there might be this eye roll, like, ugh, yeah, what, like, isn't that lofty? But we can't create something that we can't see. And so even if it's never going to be perfect, even if suffering is always going to happen in the world, we have to be able to like dip our toes into creating the world that we want to see and having that be at least a possibility in the realm of possibilities. And not just accepting our current reality as the only way of doing it.
Totally. You just gave me the deeper understanding of what people mean when they say be the change you want to see in the world. Because it's one of those things that you eye roll at. You hear that and you think like, oh yeah, that's nice. But like, it just makes me understand that so much more. And I feel like it's eye roll because it seems so huge. But, and maybe this is selfish, I don't know. But like, I feel like, but if I can change it in my world, because I know that everything is just my perception that I've built from all of the things that I've ever experienced and all the generations of things that have taught me what I know now, then if I can think that that could be a possibility in my own world, then my own perception of the world and society would shift a little bit. And being able to then pass that down to generations.
Totally. We're somebody's ancestor, even if we don't have kids, we're going to leave the world different. And so, I think what I want to say to that is like, we live in a physical world and systems of power do exist. It is harder for Black trans women to get a job and to become a CEO executive than it is for other people in the world, right? And
straight white man,
and that those systems do have a very real impact. So I'm careful to be like, you create your reality with your thoughts and like just positive think, right? So, but we can find the corners of power that we do have, and we can start to unpack that internalized not enoughness. And, even the straight white men, there is a wound in you that it feels like, things are getting taken away from you. And this.
I'd argue those people are pretty wounded.
Yes, very wounded because and it's the same wound of the kiddo that threw the tantrum at the, first class thing. It's everything has been given to you and you've never actually had to work through rejection or work through feelings of not getting what you wanted and that mediocrity has been good enough. And there's an invitation for you here to really look at the shadow of that and to actually step into the kind of man that you really want to be. and what is your true nature? And we have not given people language for how to really look at that and own what's happening in their systems. And they become so dysregulated that they lash out, right? So I can't even remember your original question, Sarah. I'm sorry. We've been going.
No, actually, I don't even know either. I'm very happy on this tangent that we got. This is good.
Yes, the perception of reality and like changing our internal, being the change that we want to see. And I also think that we eye roll that as a protection, because if we're like, oh, but we're going to be disappointed if it's not there and if it's not perfect. And well, can we simultaneously practice where can we find safety, contentment, okayness, even gratitude? Although I think gratitude, I have a whole speech on gratitude. Like gratitude can be kind of used as a bypass gaslighty thing. Like be grateful for what you have, but an embodied sense of gratitude. How can we have that in the present moment and be looking to how can we make things better? How can we still uncover our own internalized shit in our body? How can we internalize or like deconstruct and dissolve body shame, not enoughness, like dissolve and go toward the parts of us that hold that, so that we can reclaim those and be like, no, baby, that was never about you. That was never true. That was just somebody else's shit projecting onto you, and you believed it because you're human. And now we're gonna start to unpack and deconstruct that, because your true nature is always and already enough, lovable, worthy, and inextricably connected. Your true nature is one of joy and creativity and playfulness. That is our true nature. And that is true for, everybody. Maybe there are people in the world that are intentionally doing evil. I don't know. But I do think most people are doing the best that they can. Most people, think that they're quote unquote good people and want to be good people. And, we're all just misguided, and we're under the illusion that we're separate from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So, quick caveat, will you give me your gratitude speech?
Oh, sure.
What you're talking about.
Yeah. So, gratitude is such a beautiful practice, but I think a lot of times when people are uncomfortable. So let me paint you the picture is like, somebody's like, I just, my dog just died, or whatever. And somebody's like, well, let's just be grateful that they haven't suffered, or that they're not suffering anymore. They're in a better place now, right? Or only rainbows after rain, or, just find something to be grateful for. And I think that is a misguided, toxic positivity bypass kind of thing, right?
I love that.
And so
interesting.
I think first is acknowledging the pain is like, yeah, that is so hard, and there's no words. And, if somebody's drowning and you're like, focus on the positive, or find something to be grateful for. You're like,
what's the silver lining?
I actually need you to pull me out of the lake, So I just want to be mindful of how we use gratitude. And especially if we are traumatized, we can often, our system is so focused on keeping ourselves safe that it can be really hard to connect to a gratitude practice. And it can feel like a gaslight. It can feel like, well, you're just ungrateful and you should find something to be grateful for. And it's tricky because I do think, like, yes, we can look for some glimmers, we can look for some things, but sometimes we just need to meet people and meet ourselves where we're at. And don't preemptively suggest gratitude. Don't preemptively suggest having a different perspective. when what we really just need for the pain to be acknowledged and for our presence to be there in the pain, whether it's our own pain or somebody else's pain, right? Like if a client were to come to me and were to say, to disclose their trauma history, and I were to say, well, let's find something to be grateful for today, I really think that would be misattuned, right? Yeah, like your face is like, ugh, that's gross.
No.
And I think some well-meaning people offer gratitude a practice
For sure.
because they're uncomfortable sitting in the pain with people. So that's
anytime
yeah.
I've ever been through anything and the person says something like that or says, well, they sucked. It's just, it all comes down to like the same like surface level. Like you can't sit in the pain. You can't deal with it. And the only thing that's ever made me feel better is when someone has sat with me through the pain, has encouraged me to feel the pain. I've been able to just sit in the pain. It's the only way.
Yep.
I hate it. I hate it now that I'm out on the other side of it. I hate that I'm now on the other side saying to people, you just got to go through it, because when you're in it, you hate when people say it to you. But
even just like sitting, you just got to go through it. Just to be like, hey, it makes sense that what you're feeling is here right now, and I don't have any answers, but I'm with you, and I love you, and I'm just holding you in the shittiness of it. Like I'm holding you in the pain of it, and like, again, you got to read the room. You got to read, like, like sometimes if I feel like it's okay to say this, I can offer like, and I also know that it won't be this way forever. And I can see a shoreline, but right now you're in it and I'm in it with you and I love you. Right. Or I'm not telling clients I love them, but like I care about you, and I'm here. I'm another, even though this is a professional relationship, I am another human being with another human being, and I'm holding you in it. And that's why I'm actually not too worried about AI taking over my job, because
absolutely,
because AI might be able to say all the right words, but it will never have a resonant nervous system, a core, a heart that somebody else can attune to, right? And
completely,
that is part of the medicine. That is part of what is healing for people. It's not the perfect words. It's not suggesting a new perspective. Although, yeah, of course we need that. But if we're too quick to offer gratitude and a new perspective, it can really feel invalidating.
Yeah, 100% it can.
Right.
Is that the risk then? Like, I want to know what the risk is of bypassing the pain and leaning into the stay positive and toxic positivity.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get digested. It doesn't get stuck. Yeah. And so it ends up actually becoming another manager of the system, and the parts that hold the pain get ignored. Right.
Yeah.
And so if you think about being an ignored, wounded kid, like a lot of times when I'm working with clients that have had terrible, terrible abuse histories, the worst part is that nobody ever talked about it, that nobody ever named it. Everybody knew it was happening and nobody ever talked about it. Nobody ever named it. Right. And so if we are just positivity, right, that's just another wound. That's another way of ignoring our own pain. And there is a difference between recognizing, acknowledging, going toward the pain, acknowledging that we have been harmed or victimized. There is a difference between that and playing the victim, quote unquote, or over-identifying with the capital V victim, or stewing in our own shit, or just being negative, or just complaining, right? There's a difference between those two. But if people are saying, something harmed me, then we are being asked to just drop into that moment and to say, okay, I really want to understand. I want to feel you in the pain. And when we're in a different place, can I offer perspective? But right now I need to like acknowledge the pain, right? And so like, again, just offering perspective too soon,
Yeah.
it's misguided. You know, it's our own discomfort of wanting to get the person to feel better.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
really it's about wanting us to feel better. Like wanting
Yep.
there to be certainty, wanting everything to be okay, rather than just being able to sit in. Sometimes there's no answers, sometimes there's no words, sometimes shit is just hard.
Yeah, totally.
And
Which like is good to know too for when you are the person experiencing the thing and you're trying to talk to somebody that's doing that to you. It's just kind of like a knowing that you have that you're just like, well, it's about them. Like it's not that they can't they don't know how to hold pain.
Yeah.
They don't know how to process this themselves.
And then you get to use discernment between who you go to with your pain.
Right.
You know, if you're going to your mama and your mama cannot hold the pain with you, then we got to stop going.
You can't go to her for this.
You can still have love for your mom, but maybe it needs to be that you talk to her about, you know, whatever, the weather and the Broncos, or you know, where can she give you love? But maybe we stop going to the poisoned well, expecting nourishment, and to find. You don't need the whole world. You need one or two people to really be able to attune to you, and it might be a therapist or a coach for a little while. And then you are realigning your nervous system and you're reteaching your nervous system how to be in reciprocity, how to be in attunement with others, and you're going to attract different people in your life.
Totally.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people feel like they're not good enough yet because they still get triggered, they still spiral, they still have these old patterns, or their life doesn't look like the aesthetic posts that we all see on the internet. So I'm wondering how do you reframe what being good enough really looks like, or a sign that somebody can like rely on or tune into to know that they're actually healing, that they're actually on the right path to feeling better?
Yeah. Well, I think dipping your toes into that both and work of you are always and already enough, lovable, worthy, and connected. And there might be patterns in you that are just used to unhealthy, toxic patterns. And it's not because you're stupid or lazy or you're asking for it. It's because you're wanting a new ending to the story. Like when kids get into play therapy, they reenact the trauma over and over and over and over again until, you know, a lion comes and eats the bad guy, or Superman comes and rescues them out of there. And they're wanting a new ending to the story. We do the same thing. We just do it within our relationships and within our bodies, right? We're trying to get resolution, but what we get more is trauma, right? We get more trauma. We like get more evidence that we're just pieces of shit. We're not lovable. Nobody ever chooses me.
Confirmation bias.
Confirmation. Baby. See, I was right. And we get to be right. But we don't get to be happy. And so, we have to look at like what is the wounding, and where do you step back into a sense of power? Like, I have to learn how to take care of these parts. I have to learn how to not settle for shitty, unavailable, toxic people. And I cannot guarantee what other people are going to do, but what you do have the most control over is the relationship that you have with yourself. And I do not believe that you have to love yourself completely in order to find love or in order to be in healthy friendships. I actually agree with that. I think that that's sort of a hyper individualistic lens, but a little bit, you know, we gotta love ourselves a little bit, enough to know what is abuse, to know what is toxicity, to know what is unacceptable, and to know that we are no longer available for that shit. And we don't have to love ourselves all the way, but because, you know, healing happens in the context of healthy relationships as well. But
Right.
we got to do it a little bit, enough, a little bit. We got to just dip our toes into the always and already. And then we can start following that momentum. We can start reclaiming the wounded parts of ourselves. Like, you're not going to go to your poisoned well parents, or you're not going to go to your poisoned toxic ex, or your poisoned toxic friend that keeps showing up in really disappointing ways. We're going to just pull back from that, and we're going to radically accept that it might be lonely for a while, but we're breaking the addiction of settling and taking what we can, having to take what we can get. We're breaking the addiction to drama, or the addiction to toxic bonding. And it's going to be hard, but to hold that in compassion, and to know that you were doing the best that you can, and that you were just trying to get a different ending to the story. And the way to get a new ending to the story is to start to create that within your own system, to start feeling that in your body first.
Yeah, totally.
And then you got to do the work. Trauma work sucks. Trauma work,
Yeah.
it's not fun. And it's
That's why it's called work.
Yeah. and it can be lighthearted and irreverent and humor. We don't have to take ourselves too seriously. We can do art, and we can dance, and we can still try to have some fun while we're here.
Yeah.
And like there's a reason that not a lot of people are digging in here. You can go to therapy for years and years and years and just swim around and talk on the surface about what happened in your week, and never do any down and dirty work, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that are going to therapy and not really changing anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. Why do you think our culture is so obsessed with like that end result? Like the perfect
Again, I mean, I think
end result moment.
I think part of it is spiritual trauma, that idea that there's a narrow path and it's perfectionist and it's like outside of yourself. I think part of it is ancestral trauma. It's that idea that we have to just get to the things. This, like, if we have enough food, if we have this power hoarding thing, right? If we have certainty, it's just an evolution of human brain too, right? Like, we don't like certainty. We don't like uncertainty. So if we have a false sense of certainty, even if it's like, see, I was right. I got rejected again. I was right. That certainty has some safety to it. And everything that we want, a relationship, more abundance, more empowerment in ourselves, more capacity, all of that lives in uncertainty land. Right? And we don't like it. We don't like uncertainty, even if there's magic there. Right?
Yeah.
So we have to start growing our capacity to tolerate uncertainty, to have compassion for our human selves that want certainty and want safety, but to step into uncertainty. Tara Brach tells this story. Do you know Tara Brach? Have you ran across her at all?
I don't, actually.
She's a Buddhist teacher, and she tells this story. And she's like, there's a guy, hanging off the cliff, and there's water underneath him. So if he lets go, he'll be okay. But he's just hanging on this cliff, and he's like, please, God, help me, please, God, and God, or whatever, spirit, universe, whatever, is like, I'm right here, my son. All you have to do is let go. And the guy pauses and he goes, is there anybody else out there?
I love that. That's such a good one.
Yeah. So, we have to practice surrender and uncertainty, and just pointing our feet in the direction of what feels like wisdom, of what feels like self-compassion, of what feels like the wise kind of hard, right? Not the right or the wrong or whatever, but the wise kind of hard. And we have to start holding, multiple truths. Like, yes, the world is brutal, and there is still magic here. There is still tiny, beautiful things that happen every day. And there are a lot of people that are creating a better world, right? We can hold that only you can do it, my friend, and you can't do it alone. Only you can do it, and you can't do it alone. We can hold that the trauma definitely impacted you, that the brutality, like it was not okay what happened, and it is not who you are. It does not define you, and you can take ownership. Like it is not your fault, and it's your responsibility to look at it, to deal with it. Welcome to the party. You know how many people are in my office who were abused as children, and guess who's paying the bill? Not the perpetrator, right?
Oh my God, amen. Oh my God, amen.
Welcome to the party, honey. Like, we're all out here paying our bills, paying our therapy bills because of something that happened to us that wasn't our fault.
Yep. Put that on a fucking t-shirt. Literally, dude, that's so true.
You know,
it makes me think like I've had this thought originally when we were talking about how like the left brain is a dick to the right brain, and I just think that like it's so bizarre because like the way our society is structured, it would feel obviously uncomfortable to lean into that more.
Yeah.
Like we're just like so not programmed for it. And so like naturally we feel so uncomfortable when we start to like have a little bit more of an open mind towards these things and think that that could
totally
be how things could play out.
Totally.
But
and I know we've been talking for a long time, but I will say, and I'm not saying like, oh, just throw some psilocybin or ketamine or whatever in your system. Like you got to be intentional if you're going to use those modalities, or breath work even. But like, working with medicine, working with like some consciousness shifting things can really help us work with the surrender and work with the mystery and get a felt sense that we are okay, that we are held here, that the earth is holding us, that, even death is a transition, and none of us are getting out of this thing alive, right? Mm-hmm. And so working with death, working with the mystery, working with uncertainty, working with the void, working with the unknown, that is medicine that we are very adverse to in this culture. We want certainty, we want youth, we want safety, and there's an invitation for us to start to dip our toes into the mystery and into the not knowing. Like into not knowing all of the answers.
Totally.
Yeah.
To finish us up, because I'm sorry, I know we have been talking forever. Do you still have, are you okay? Do you have time?
Totally. I just hope people, have taken a break or moved their bodies. Hit pause and digest. If you're still with us, good job, listener. Man, you are committed.
That's what happens when you have a good conversation. You can't help it.
Totally. Yeah, but, get a snack.
Yeah, amen. To wrap us up, though, I like to play a game with my guests. I call it Kind of Toxic, Kind of Well, because I think it brings humanity to my guests that always seem to really understand this stuff so intensely. But because you guys a lot of the time have done so much healing, you give either really good answers, or sometimes you're like, I haven't done that in years. And that's always fun to hear people say that it shows that it's actually possible. So I've got 9 rapid fire questions.
Okay, great. Fun. I love it.
Okay, hell yeah. What or who are you jealous of right now?
Oh, my friend just got a TEDx speech, and I'm super jealous of her. And I'm super excited for her. I love her. Good job, Jen.
Of course. Two things can be true.
Yeah, totally. But I'm so jealous. Yes. But it's, jealous and inspired. Yeah.
That's cool. When's the last time you sacrificed your own wants or needs to keep the peace with others, even though you didn't want to?
Oh, today. I'm getting better at it though, right? Like, and and I own, if I'm saying yes to something I don't want to do, I know that it's my responsibility to digest the resentment and not pass that on to somebody
Ooh.
else.
Okay, I love that. That's cool. I love that. What's a moment recently where you caught yourself ignoring your own needs or choosing yourself instead?
Yeah, so I just went to I was a keynote speaker at an event, and I felt really bad for like not wanting to like come home because it was an hour drive, and I just bought the bullet, and uh I put a hotel on Miles, and I was like, I'm not coming home. I'm not going to do it. Love you. Love you, babe. I appreciate you. Grateful to have a
God.
partner that I can do that with, but it's hard to cook all the meals and do all the things, but I was like, I'm going to do this. And I'm really glad that I did. Yeah.
Hell yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. What do you find yourself overthinking about these days?
Oh God. Politics, the
Real.
collective, um, if I'm doing enough, if I'm, if I'm doing enough, and
Yeah.
what is a good use of my energy, because I'm pretty sure fighting with people on Facebook is not, is not.
You can convince yourself it is in the moment, though.
Yeah, like this is not an effective use. This is
For real.
dysregulation. This is thinking. This is not where my medicine is. Yeah.
Yeah, literally. What is a should, like an expectation that you've put on yourself that you've let go of, or one that you know you still need to?
I mean, I think I'm constantly deconstructing and dancing between that always enough and like wanting to feel like I'm stepping into my purpose. And so it's like there's a shadow and a light of that, right? Like there's definitely a wound in me of like never enough. Never I'm never doing enough. I've never successful enough. I'm never and there can be a real shadow to it, but it's also what drives me to want to have a bigger impact. So I'm just trying to stay in the lightness of that, right? Of like not in the should, but in the inspired action. But it dances, right? It dances in between
Mhm.
should, expectation, not enough versus like, I'm satisfied and grateful and eager to continue to expand. So I guess it's like a
Totally.
little bit of both, dancing between those two.
Okay, well, I'm taking that and I'm putting it in my pocket.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Good.
That's really insightful. I will use that.
Yeah.
What's something that makes you quick to get annoyed or angry?
Uh, Entitlement, like the cream cheese thing, right? Like, but I
Hmm.
think it's because
Hmm.
I also have an entitled part of me, right? Like, I think there's a shadow. I mean, I'm American, I'm white person. Like, I
Hmm.
definitely have some privilege and entitlement that
For sure.
is my own shadow. But yeah, when I see it in other people, I'm like furious about it,
Rage.
right? Um, yeah, and just bullies, right? But like also like where do I cause harm? But I don't think healing or transformation is supposed to make us okay with shitty behavior, right? Like when people are acting shitty, uh we're not supposed to stay calm. We're supposed to have capacity and to be like, that behavior is unacceptable. You're trying to intimidate me. Stop it. Whatever. And um yeah, so I guess there's another both and there
I love that.
too.
I love that. I love that. I love that. What's a toxic thought you still catch yourself believing?
Yeah, not enough is my core wound. So it's some flavor of not enough. Like nobody wants your book.
Okay.
Nobody wants. Just go back to slinging eggs. You're better at that.
So real. What's a wellness rule or trend you don't buy into?
Just because you don't like something doesn't mean the other person is a narcissist, right? Um, and so there's that. And then also, like, I think we have, I am an attachment person, I am a validation person, but we have, I think, swung the pendulum a little far in the like, every feeling that you have matters, every feeling that you have is valid. Like, we do have to own our feelings and feel into them, but that doesn't mean that, somebody else necessarily, caused harm. Like it's a dance that we have to do. And so I think I certainly want to be an attunement and validation with people, and we want to live in a world that makes reasonable accommodation for people. And again, that entitlement piece, like, you know, if I'm uncomfortable, then that means there's not safety here. Or if I am having a feeling, then that means that you caused me harm, or that means you have assaulted me, right? Like
Mhm.
there's just this dance that we're doing between those two things. So I
Totally.
think that narcissism and everything, every feeling is valid.
Hmm. Yeah. If you could leave my Wellish besties one piece of advice for them to be more well than toxic, what advice would you give them?
Uh, Try to drop into your core, try to drop into your body. Um, dance between you are always and already enough, and we got work to do. Dance between things mean stuff, things matter, and you are also just here to like enjoy being human and enjoy having a piece of chocolate cake every once in a while and having a good laugh with a friend. Like it all matters, and we're all just little specks of stardust too, right? Like don't take yourself too seriously and do the work, you know.
That's
Yeah,
so Wellish. I love that so much. Like that is like just so on brand for everything that is trying to be. So
perfect.
that's
Yeah.
just such good advice.
Yeah, you definitely are aligned. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
100%. I
grateful to
agree.
have found you, Miss
Me
Sarah, for
too.
sure.
Very much so. I want to know where people can find you. Like if people want to hear
Yeah.
more from you, where can they get your book, all of that stuff?
Yeah. So they can still get a signed copy of my book if they order it from the website. So that's just at avoscounseling.com, avoscounseling.com. And you'll just click on like book resources and it's under there. I will send you that free polyvagal
Perfect.
handout that people can download, and that does get people onto my newsletter. I just send one newsletter a month usually, unless I've got an event coming up, then I'll send stuff like that, or I'll send podcasts that I've been on. But usually I just send one a month that's just something that I'm thinking about, and hopefully it's a little bit of wisdom for people. And of course, you can unsubscribe to that if you just want the handout. But yeah, the website is where they can find me, and you can also get Always Enough Never Done on Amazon as well. I think
Okay.
the Kindle book is a little bit cheaper than the paperback. But yeah, and then I have coaching packages, and I can work with people in nervous system regulation, and really just tapping into your medicine and tapping into the blocks that keep you from just being the version of yourself that you want to be. So I would love to connect with anybody who feels a connection with me for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Erica. Seriously, I really do feel like we were in alignment. This is a really good conversation. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed talking to
yeah,
you.
same. Thank you. And thanks for sticking with us, listeners. That was a marathon.
It sure was.